All right, everyone, welcome back to In the Vet's Office. I am your host, Dr. Josie, and today we have an amazing guest. We have Steve Holland here with us, who brings 18 years of law enforcement experience, including 11 years as a dog handler, 10 years on the SWAT team, where he served as a team leader for 5 of those years. Throughout his career, he has handled 4 dogs, 2 of which were fully integrated into SWAT operations. Steve played a pivotal role in establishing his department's SWAT dog program. Steve is also the founder and lead integration instructor of Righteous Tactics, a company dedicated to enhancing the integration of K-9 units into law enforcement and military tactical teams. Welcome to Into the Vet's Office,
Thank
Steve.
you. Thank you for having me.
So happy that you're here. This is a very serendipitous because I have been looking for a K-9 unit to come in and to interview them. In fact, I had texted our producer Morgan at one point and I was like, hey, I'm in the airport and I just saw a beagle sniffing the people, and I stopped the handler and I'm like, I know this is so bad because I know you're working, but like, can you come on my podcast?
What did he say?
Oh, he said yes, and I gave him my number and I never heard back. So I'm really glad that you're here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And so we had talked a little bit about your experience and how you started in like the police department and then worked your way to SWAT. And so I really would love for you to kind of take us back to the beginning and how you've made this journey to where you are today.
Okay, yeah, sure. So all the way back, like it's interesting. I never really thought I'd be a police officer. It wasn't really. I wouldn't say it was my childhood dream. The seed was planted, unfortunately, during the Columbine tragedy. So I was in high school when that happened, and I remember, I think I was 15 years old. I remember going to work after the Columbine. You know, back then, no one had phones. You heard something happen, but you didn't really see the footage until you got home, or in my case, when I went to work. And I remember seeing the footage on the television and I think that was the first time I realized I was like almost scared to go to school. You know, like this was the first time I had ever seen anything like that happen. I believe it was one of the first in the country, definitely one of the worst and the earliest. But I remember watching the footage of those SWAT guys pulling kids that looked like my age out of the windows. You know, like it was, I don't know if it was CNN or what it was, but it was just playing on repeat, you know, and you had the anchor giving the updates, but it was just the same footage over and over again. These same kids just covered in blood being carried out the window. And I don't think I consciously realized it then, but that's when the seed was planted in my brain that is what I wanted to do. And it took several years for that to kind of manifest. So then fast forward to college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I dabbled in a couple different majors, and I ended up just making the decision, I want to do that. I want to be police. So I got my college degree in criminal justice. And then I really started thinking about, okay, if I'm going to do this, where do I want to work? Where do I want to work? And at the time, I was going to Springfield College in Massachusetts. And believe it or not, back then, a lot more people wanted to be the police. So it was much more difficult to get on a police department. So I knew if I was going to do it, I wanted to do something specialized. I knew I was very interested in SWAT. I was very interested in working a dog. I wanted to do K-9.
Did you grow up with dogs?
No, that's what's so crazy. So I am not like the person you would think. Like if you knew me as a kid, you wouldn't think that I would be where I am today, because I didn't grow up in a family that had guns. No one hunted. The part of New York I lived in, it wasn't really that common. It wasn't part of the culture. And then my parents refused to let me have dogs. Like I asked for dogs my entire life growing up, and they always said, no, you can have a bird.
Defied all the odds.
Yes. So I here I am dreaming of doing this stuff, and I don't have any experience in it. You know, I've never shot a gun before. I don't know much about dogs. I know I like dogs. I want a dog, but, and I know I want to work for a big department, but all those departments were receiving so many applicants. You had to know somebody to get fast tracked. Otherwise you were waitlisted, and I didn't know anybody. And then I had an opportunity to get a master's degree. So I stayed, I went to grad school. I was up there, and I got a master's degree in education. So now I'm at this crossroad. Like, do I still want to be a police officer, or do I want to pursue this career in education? And I started researching different departments, and then I ultimately found the agency that I work at now. And it was 1,200 miles away, but it was a growing city. The department had a SWAT team. It had a K-9 unit. And I just really was interested in that department. So that was actually the only department I applied for. I decided I'm going to go all in. The I think it was 3 days after I graduated grad school, I packed up my apartment, I rented a minivan, and I drove 1,200 miles to that city, and I hadn't heard back from them yet, so I needed to find a job. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. It's not like I had any connections. And I just found a job at a local mall, and I think I only had to work there 2 months, and then I got a phone call from the police department. So then I was accepted in the academy, and
when you get accepted into the academy, that's the training portion.
correct. Yeah, just for basic police officer, yes.
How long does that last?
When I went there, it was about 6 months.
Okay.
I think it was just maybe a hair under 6 months.
And when you're doing that, you're not doing any of the K-9 stuff yet.
No.
Just
So
basic police training.
Yeah. So that was kind of the scary part. It's like I was interested in being a police officer, but I really only wanted to be a specific kind of police officer, you know?
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee you're going to get that. And I remember when I had my police interview, the lady who was interviewing me asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I told her, and you know, I'm sure they hear that a lot from a lot of different people. "Oh, you want to do SWAT?" And I remember her just rolling her eyes, and she was just like, "Okay, whatever." But I was like, "That's what I want to do." But yeah, you have to become a police officer first before you can even think about applying for that stuff. And then when I did graduate the academy, at that time, you still had to be on the department as a sworn police officer for 3 years before you could apply for anything specialized. So here I am, like, okay, I'm gonna have to do 3 years of a job that I don't specifically want to do to get to the job I really want to do.
Your stepping stone.
Yes, and there's no guarantee I'm gonna get it.
Right.
So
Bit of a gamble.
It was, but you know, I still found police work rewarding. So that it wasn't like it was horrible, but it was in the back of my mind. I just, you know, there were certain things I didn't enjoy about working in patrol, and I was really looking forward to doing something that I was passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so then you hit year 3.
Yep.
And then you apply. Is it for SWAT that you apply for then?
So
or
I
to get
applied
a
for K-9 first.
Okay.
And that was probably purely a confidence issue. Growing up, not shooting guns, I just did not think. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I could pass the calls. I don't know if I can make it through the selection process right now.
For SWAT.
For SWAT, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But K-9, not that K-9 is easier, but I knew I was much more likely to probably succeed at that first,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I don't know if it was a full, like, laid out plan in my head, but I think, like, at least at the maybe at the subconscious level, I was thinking just get established in K-9 first, and then you can apply for SWAT later. And that is what I did. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but there was a K-9 posting. They had some openings. I tried out the first time, and I actually didn't get it the first time. And it's just such a competitive process. There's so many people that want to do it, and there's very few vacancies. Like, they don't come open very often, you know? So the guy that beat me on my first try, he's one of my best friends now. That was I think his third time trying out. So it turns into this like this process where most people have to try out more than once to get it. Not everybody. It really depends on the timing. Like right now, I think they're about to have several vacancies. So, you know, that just wasn't the situation when I applied. But he had already been through the interview. You know, this is his third time. He knew how to you know, knock those answers out of the park. And it was my first one. I felt like I did really well. I finished second on the list, but he got it. And then I had to wait another year, and then there was another vacancy. I tried out that time, and then I eventually got it. So that was 2013. So I started the police academy in 2007, and then I finally made it to K-9 in 2013.
Wow, all those years later, your
Yes.
your dream is coming true.
Finally coming true, yes.
And throughout that time, now that you're an adult, you're not living with your parents, do you have a dog then, or is really your first experience with K-9s at this level once you get accepted in 2013?
Let's see. So in 2013, my wife and I had 2 dogs at that point.
Okay.
Actually 3, because she had one when I met her.
Okay.
So no, luckily I had some interaction with dogs
Okay.
before that,
I
but
was like, how?
I hadn't trained any of them. I mean, they were
That's a different
definitely
story.
wild dogs.
Okay.
There was definitely no obedience with those dogs at all, and I didn't, you know, I had no idea how to do that stuff anyway. So
when they get you into that area of working with the K-9s, I'm assuming that there are guys that have been doing this, or women that have been doing it for many years, and they sort of teach you, like you go through another round of training. What does that look like?
Yeah, so that's almost a whole nother 6 months. So I get accepted. Hey, you're going to K-9. I went January 1st was my first day, 2013. They didn't have the dogs yet. So right now I'm just like, for that month, I'm just kind of learning the basics of stuff, like learning how do we function around here? Who cleans the kennels? How do we take care of the dogs? I got to observe the monthly training. So what the monthly training is once the guys and girls are certified with their dogs and they're answering calls on the street, they still have to come back to training at least once a month and do training with the training staff. So our K-9 unit has its own training staff, and that's what they're responsible for. It's just keeping the current dogs certified, making sure they're staying proficient with the skills that are required to stay certified, but also making sure that the handler and the dog are like operational. So it's almost like two different things when it comes to that training. There's one, you're training for the certification. There's certain things we just have to do and we have to pass, but then we also want to make sure that this dog can do the job on the street, because the street's going to be a little different than the certification. So there's different types of training for both of those. So I was getting to observe those experienced people like you're talking about. Like some of them were, one of them was a legend. He was on his 5th dog at that time. I got to watch him train, and the person who was the head trainer at the time, he was also a legend. He was the son of the man who started the K-9 unit for my department.
Wow.
So back in the 70s. So the amount of knowledge that he had, I mean, it was just like drinking from a fire hose. I mean,
in his blood.
Yes, it's just like, and he would say stuff, but to him, it's second nature. I'm trying to like understand it and remember it and retain it, and it's just it was difficult. It was very, very difficult.
I'm sure.
But
and so when you get accepted into that program, do they tag you with one dog?
Yes.
Each handler has one dog. And when you're there and you're just learning the ins and outs, at what point do you get your dog? And do you know his name, her name?
Yeah.
Is it mainly female dogs or male dogs?
We actually, right now, I think there's 2 female dogs, and I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how many dogs total there are right now, just because there's been a few people who just resigned and a few dogs that retired. But when I was over there in the actual K-9 unit itself, we were slotted for 18 dogs.
Okay.
So
and majority are male.
Most of them are male. Yes.
Okay.
There are some females though. Yeah.
Okay. And so what was your first dog that you got tagged with?
So his name was Chaos. So they transferred us over. They transferred the humans over before they get the dogs, because they never know when the administration is going to say, okay, we have enough manpower and patrol. We can now we can send you people to fill your vacancies. It's kind of like a domino effect. People graduate the academy, patrol gets filled up, and then now we can start like backfilling some of these specialized units. So you don't want to get in a situation where you go buy the dogs and now you've got dogs and you don't have any people to give them to.
Right.
So they brought back, I was in a class of 4. I was the only new handler. So I was going in a class with 3 guys that had, one of them, I think it was his 3rd dog. The other 2, it was their 2nd dog. So I was the only like fully green handler. And the way it worked then was the guys that went to select the dogs from the vendor and brought them back, they allowed the most experienced, the most senior guy to pick which dog he wanted. So they kind of like got him out and did some tests on him so the guys could see like which one they wanted to pick. And it was funny. No one wanted my dog because he was the biggest, and they were all experienced. So they're like, that's going to be a nightmare to deal with. I don't want a 90-pound dog pulling on my shoulder and me having to pick him up and get him over fences and stuff. So I got stuck with him. But it's funny, that was the dog I wanted to begin with. So
okay.
At that time I was in my 20s. I didn't care how big he was. Like I wanted this dog. He looked so fierce and perfect. It was like everything I pictured like when I wanted to go into K-9. So they do. Ours came with just made up names. The vendors, they just give them names. So you get paperwork, it has a name on it. You can keep that name or you can change it. I don't even remember what his was. Maybe it was Danny or something like that. It was Danny. I was just like, I don't want my dog to be named Danny. So
come here, Danny.
So yeah,
I think Chaos is better.
I thought it was more fitting. So,
yeah, definitely.
So we start, like, as soon as you start training, you just start imprinting that name on them, and it's not a big deal.
And I know I had asked you this before, but when you get these dogs and you're training with them and then you're in the field with them, they come home with you at night.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Every dog is paired to their handler and they live with them. So that is one of the requirements to even put in for K-9. You have to have a house and the space for that. If you live in an apartment building, that won't be conducive for it. So
are you allowed to have other dogs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Now, some dogs, not just police dogs, some dogs are dog aggressive, right? So I don't know if every handler has, like, I don't know if their police dog has a good relationship with their personal dogs, but I've always been blessed. I've never had those issues. They've always gotten along with them. So.
And so how did you get from doing the police K-9 unit into SWAT?
Yeah, that's another crazy coincidence. Like the number of things that had to happen for that to come to life was insane. At least I think so. But so I made K-9 in 2013. In 2015, that's when SWAT posted, and I put in for that. And so I put in for the collateral, like a collateral SWAT position, because I was in K-9. There was no way that I'd be able to go. And at that time, our full-time SWAT team was smaller than it is today. I think there was 10 guys on that team. So I was putting in to basically be dual role. I want to be SWAT, and then I'll also be K-9. So when I'm not SWAT, I'll just be doing my K-9 stuff. And then when they need me, I'll go help out with the SWAT team.
Because at that time, SWAT was not using any dogs.
No,
so you knew, like, I'll go into SWAT. I won't be doing any K-9 handling, so I still want to be able to do this on the police side.
So it was almost like two different jobs. You know, depending on what I was headed to, would dictate what uniform I wore and whether I would bring my dog or not.
Okay.
So I'm still on the collateral role when this story happens, but I remember we tried to use the dog. We tried to integrate the dog out of necessity. So there was I get woken up one morning by the SWAT lieutenant calling me saying, "Hey, we need you and your dog." And I was like, "Okay, what's going on?" He said, there was a gas station attendant that was murdered in cold blood last night by a couple, a male and a female. They were the females running away with the male. They went in there to rob the place and they killed him. And now we think he's hiding in the area. There's a school right across the street that the alarm's going off, the window's open, and they want SWAT to come clear it. So I'm like, okay, I'm on my way, because I worked I think second shift when this call came out. So I was actually off duty. So I wake up, I get all my stuff, I drive there. And I remember the SWAT guys like looking at me saying, "Hey, how's this going to work?" And I was like, "I don't know. We can try it, but we've never done this before, so
because
I don't."
Your dog's there.
Yeah, like,
okay.
and what I mean is, like, is he going to bite other guys?
Yeah.
You know, because I've done building searches with my dog before, but it's usually just me and the dog, or me and a few other officers. We've never had 20 guys flooding this building.
Right.
You know, like, if you're with me, he's probably going to realize you're with me, but if you end up 3 rooms away from me,
how's he to know?
He's not. Like, I don't think he's going to know.
Right.
But out of necessity, it was probably stupid, but we tried it.
Yeah.
And in chaos, like, he did it. I mean, there was guys all the way down the hallway. I remember at one point we came out of one room and this other team was coming down the hallway, and they stopped as they came around the corner, and chaos like stopped and looked at them and then just went back to searching.
Oh my
like
God.
it was like,
everyone held their breath.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those scary moments, because it could have gone the other way for sure. Some dogs would have gone. They would have been like, "Okay,
yeah,
that's the decoy. I'm going to go get him."
Guy.
But go ahead.
Did you end up finding the bad guy?
We did. He wasn't in that building.
Okay.
But so we finished clearing the building, and then we just started saturating the area, and there was a motorist that drove by and spotted them like off this embankment. So he stopped and flagged down. I mean, this was like a huge manhunt. There was THP. Everyone was out there looking for these guys.
Got it.
Or this couple. So anyway, he stops the first traffic officer he sees. So he tells them where he saw him. They put it out on the radio, and we were like 200 yards away. So we went down there and got him.
So it's interesting. Your job of SWAT is like, hey, we need to also use this guy's second job, which is being a K-9 handler, because there's some added bonuses to this. And then I'm sure it got to a point where they were like, hey, maybe we should get our own dogs.
Yeah. So that was the moment I realized what these dogs are capable of. You know, that there were people that had been doing K-9 for 30 years, 20 years, 30 years that would say that's impossible. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to teach a dog to work with that many guys and not bite them. They would say one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to bite them, or you socialize him so much and he's letting everybody work with him that when he finally finds a violent bad guy, he's not going to engage him because he's so used to not biting anybody. So there was a lot of resistance. Like, people did not want that program to happen. But that's when I realized, well, it can be done, because we didn't even try. Like, we didn't even teach this dog, and he did it. So imagine if we actually figure out how to train him and like build fundamentals and really like take this to the next level. So it still took a couple years to get the full program going, but after that, one of the guys on the team was able to work out a course where we had outside instructors come from a company called Tier 1 Tactics, and they were mostly former military guys, former special forces, and that's what they did. I mean, that's not all they did, but they integrated the dogs overseas on missions. So they came out and they did a class for us, and Chaos had actually just passed away from cancer right after that, right before that class came. So we actually didn't get to use Chaos for that, but we used some regular K-9 guys that weren't on SWAT.
Mm-hmm.
One of them he was like I was, he was collateral, but we used a couple different dogs that looked like they were suitable for it. And then they actually showed us like, hey, I know you've done it like on a necessity, but this is actually how you teach the dogs to do it. And and it all made so much sense. And they showed us how to integrate these dogs and how to teach the guys how to communicate to them. So if in that instance, when Chaos saw those people down the hallway, if it had gone the other way and he started running a hit on them, teaching them how to communicate nonverbally with the dog so he understands that he's part of the pack.
Got it.
Or that they're part of the pack.
So the guy he's coming after, let's say it's a SWAT member, he can non-verbally give him a signal to say, hey, I'm with you.
Yeah.
And the dog will back down.
Essentially, yeah.
Wow.
A lot of it's based on like the movements and the body language. I mean, we can verbally command them as well, but
if you have to be quiet.
Yeah, there's that, but it's not even necessary because these animals are it's part of their instinct. Like they have a prey drive, right? They want to work, especially these breeds, and then like I believe at least naturally they want to work in a pack. Like they're pack animals. So this just suits them. Like they just pick it up. They understand it. And they realize that I'm like the handler is dad and everybody else are my uncles.
Yeah.
And we're all working together.
Yeah. So. They are so smart. I have a German Shepherd. We can definitely talk about the breed, but it's crazy how intelligent they are.
Yes.
And they don't need, like, they get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're too smart for their own good.
Yeah.
So I definitely.
It makes it hard. Sometimes that makes it hard to train them.
Yes.
I remember my first trainer, he would laugh and look at me and say, Steve, it would be easier to train a stupid dog.
Exactly. A stupid dog that just wants a cookie.
Yes.
Not these guys. They're like.
Yeah, they're always trying to outthink you. They're trying
to
figure out how to get to what they want quicker.
And you'll probably appreciate this. I have a lot of owners that come in that maybe have never had a dog before. And they're like, I think German Shepherds are cool or Malinois are cool. I'm going to get one. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Pump the brakes. Like you need to be really committed and, be committed to training and have a yard and activities because they require so much stimulation.
Yes. And not just physical. That's the part a lot of them, I think, forget or don't even realize. They think, oh, he'll get exercise, but it's not just that. Those breeds, they need the mental part too. They need to problem solve. So. You need, like you said, train them. You need to give them tasks to do.
Yeah, they love it.
Otherwise, they're going to figure out other outlets.
Yeah. So. Otherwise, your drywall will get destroyed. Yes. Your shoes will get destroyed. Okay. So now you've shown them, okay, dogs can do this. And then from there, is the SWAT team integrating dogs at this point?
So at that point we were, but the team itself didn't have we didn't have our own dogs yet. So we were still relying on K-9 unit officers to assist us when we needed a dog. And that worked fine. There were no issues with that, but there was still a lot of resistance from at that time. The lieutenant that was over the K-9 unit, I personally don't think he was a big fan of it. He didn't want it, and I don't know if that was like a control thing or if he just didn't like SWAT. I really don't know, but I just know that it was like, no, that's impossible. Y'all are never going to have your own dogs. So it wasn't until 2020 that. This wasn't just my agency, a lot of law enforcement people quit. They were like, I'm done. This is too much. I've got a family. I don't want to do this anymore. That's just too stressful. And that other handler I mentioned a few minutes ago, who was also collateral and K-9 with me, he went through the SWAT selection process with me, one of my best friends. His dog was one of the ones that had been integrated with the team. But he was like, I'm done. I'm going to go do some other things. I can't do police work anymore. And interesting, his dad is the one that was my main trainer. So this is the grandson of the man who created the unit to begin with in the 1970s. And he's like, I'm done. Police is in my blood, but I'm done.
Wow.
So the lieutenant had changed over the K-9 unit at that point, and the lieutenant was a lieutenant who was also on SWAT. So like the pieces are starting to come together, right? And he calls me one day and he says, "Hey, Steve, Chad's retiring, and Duke was the dog. He said Duke is at a weird age. Like he's so old, it doesn't really make sense for us to give him, like to recycle him to a new handler.
Mm-hmm.
But you're certified with the USPCA. The dog's certified with the USPCA, even though it had been at that point, I hadn't been working a dog for a few minutes, but I still had obtained that certification in the past. So his thought process was, you two can get in service very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
All we have to do is get you guys to bond, do some training, and pass a certification. We don't have to do the required 6 months of training. If we do that, this dog is going to lose another 6 months of his life, and it's just not, it doesn't make any sense. What do you think about taking him?" And at this point, I'm full-time SWAT. I'm one of the supervisors on the SWAT team because we've jumped a couple years. And he's like, "What do you think about taking him and trying this as a trial run to see if the full-time SWAT team can have dogs?" And I hate admitting this. I didn't want to do it at first because
Really?
at this point I'd stopped working a dog, and working dogs it's just such a commitment, and I don't want to say I was being lazy, but I do remember thinking to myself,
You were content.
yeah, I'm all right now. Like
Yeah.
that's a lot of work. I'm going to have that dog 24/7. But I thought about it, and it made a lot of sense. And I remember saying to him, "Hey, if that's what's best for the team, then I'll do it." And so I did it, and I took him. And we got certified, like I said, really quickly because we both knew what we were doing. All we had to do was pass the certification process. And within the first month of being on the street with him, we were involved in multiple critical incidences, and not only did he save officers' lives, but he saved suspects' lives, because there was several where if we hadn't had a dog there, it would have escalated into a lethal force situation.
I think that is so important and something that I really didn't think about. Like, yes, this dog is saving law enforcement's lives, but it's also saving the suspects' lives as well. Because if he's not there to sort of act as that middleman buffer, you might have to use lethal force. So that's such an important point that I never would have thought about.
No, most people don't think. I don't know if I ever thought of it until we started doing working with the dogs. But
basically that's hey, here's the bad guy. The dog jumps in to kind of take him down, and then you're able to apprehend the suspect without having to use lethal force.
Yeah,
okay.
I can give you some examples that kind of help illustrate it. So, we've been involved in we've been asked to help with several suicidal, violent people, right? The first time that we used a dog on a situation like that actually was chaos. And that's when I was still the collateral role. But we had a man who had, if I'm remembering it correctly, he tried to shoot his wife or his girlfriend, but they were able to get out of the house. So we had aggravated, this man is wanted now. There's aggravated assault warrants for him. He's not just suicidal. He's also a criminal at this point. But he has fled into his backyard, and he was just holding a gun to his head. And he was very intoxicated and was making a lot of threats, like, I'm gonna kill myself. I want to do suicide by cop. I'm gonna make you guys kill me. And we had him contained. At that point, SWAT had full containment of the home. He was in the backyard, so we had him isolated. There was nowhere for him to go. But obviously, if we went up there to try to just put him in handcuffs, there was a high likelihood, based on his statements, that he was going to point the gun at us and force us to kill him. So we came up with a plan to use the dog. And my first thought was, well, I don't want my dog to die. I don't want to just send him. This guy's going to see the dog coming.
Yeah.
He'll have all the time in the world to just take the gun and go like that, shoot the dog, and then either shoot himself or then raise the gun up at us and make us shoot him, because he says that's what he wants to do. So I started thinking about it, and we had other tools at our disposal. So the plan we came up with was, hey, we're going to throw a flashbang at him. That's going to disorient him, surprise him. And then they're 40 millimeter rounds, but they're basically foam, they shoot out of a launcher, and they're just basically foam rounds. They hurt, but they don't leave any permanent injuries or anything like that. So I'm talking to my lieutenant. I'm like, I think we can do this without killing him, without letting him force us to kill him
Yeah.
and protect the dog at the same time. I don't think. I mean, I know this isn't 100% guaranteed, but I think this is our best
Option.
chance with what we're dealing with here. Unless we're just going to walk away and let this guy kill his wife or kill himself or whatever. Like if we're going to take this guy into custody, this is the only way I can think of doing it that's going to minimize
Collateral damage.
yes, and preserve life in general. So he passes the plan up the chain of command. Everyone says, "Okay, you guys can do it." And then the suspect gave us a countdown. He said, and I don't remember what it was, like 60 seconds. I'm doing it. Like he's talking to the negotiators. I'm going to do it in 60 seconds. So I look at my lieutenant, and everyone's like, "All right, we're doing it." Like he's just forced their hand. It's been approved. Do it, and it worked. So the flashbang went off, and of course that shocked the suspect. So he's disoriented, and the dog closed the distance way faster than we could.
Yeah.
Hit him so hard that it knocked the gun out of his hand.
Wow.
And then just kept him immobilized while we ran up there to get him. So
wow.
yes, he got dog bit. But what's worse, being shot or the dog bite's going to heal.
Yeah.
If he had shot himself in the head, that wouldn't heal. And if he forced us to shoot him, it would have been worse. So yeah, a lot of people don't think of it that way. They just think, oh, you guys are using these dogs on people. That sounds really violent. But we're not using them irresponsibly like that. We're using them in an effort to try to reduce the ultimate force that's used.
Right. Safety for all involved. Yeah. And wow, that is such an amazing story. Okay, so where were we at now? Now the SWAT team has K-9s.
Yep. So
okay.
So I'm hit the street with Duke, and we're involved in several incidences that show like, hey, this preserved life. And it just kind of grew from there. They saw the value of it.
Okay.
And the other interesting thing, at least that I think is interesting, is a lot of people thought, oh man, you guys got your own dogs now. You guys are going to be getting lots of dog bites. And I think that the misconception was like use of force was going to go up. And it's actually the exact opposite. Not only do we get less dog bites than most people thought we would, our total use of force has gone down because it's such a deterrent.
Right.
Obviously some people are hell-bent on not being held accountable or they don't want to go to jail, and they're going to be those people that fight. But it has convinced more people to just surrender than ever before, just having that dog there. They
say, and this is not the same, but in robberies even, the biggest deterrent is not an alarm, not your lights, it's hearing a dog bark.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. I would probably just give up and go to jail if I had a
yeah.
Duke
most
coming
do,
at
thankfully.
me.
Yeah.
Well, that is amazing. I asked my listeners if they had any questions for you, and I was inundated with questions.
Okay.
People have so many questions, so I'm going to ask you some. And one of the big things was these are the breeds that you're mainly working with are German Shepherds and Malinois.
Yes.
Do you have a preference between the two?
Ironically, I like the hybrid.
Okay.
And that's what my current dog is. Alpha is a mix between a German Shepherd and a Malinois. But it's such a there are stereotypes for both breeds, and they're not necessarily true. I mean, they're stereotypes for a reason. Like, yes, most Malinois are going to be very geeked up, more hyper than the German Shepherd. So there's a lot of people that subscribe to those thoughts. They're like, oh, I don't want a Malinois, they're too crazy. And then there's other people that are like, I don't want a German Shepherd, they're too slow. Like, I want that fast missile dog, And I've seen both. I've seen German Shepherds that are spazzes and are great at agility, and I've seen Malinois that are calm and docile.
Yeah.
So, but there's something about my current dog, and maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's not because he's half and half, but he is like the perfect demeanor for me. And he's also, now it goes back to now that I'm older, he's smaller. He's not a 90-pound dog, so I do like that. Like it makes my life a lot easier.
A little more agile too, maybe.
Yes.
Smaller.
It's just like he's like the best of both worlds, at least for me. So.
I guess that brings me to another question, which is, what do you look for when you're like, oh, yes, this is the perfect dog as a handler? Like, what are some of those prerequisites?
Well, the first couple dogs I had, I wasn't able to go down and go to the vendor to see this, like how they pick the dogs. But for Alpha, I was able to do that. And I got to see the kind of the tests and stuff that the training staff kind of looks at. And it makes a lot of sense. So we're mostly looking for their drive. I would say that's probably the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I mean by that is like how badly do they want that toy or that reward,
Mm-hmm.
and how long is their attention span for it. So like one simple test that they did was with Alpha, they showed him a toy and saw how excited he got. Okay, good, he's really excited, he wants that toy. So then they threw the toy into some really high grass that he's probably never gonna, like, he's not gonna find it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he does, but the point is it's supposed to be really difficult, and we want to see if the dog's gonna look for it. And of course he went right in there and he started searching for it. And then we just sit there and we watch. And some of the dogs, they would search for a little bit, but then they would start eating grass or they'd start peeing on things, and then they lose interest. And,
Oh, look, a squirrel.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
this may still be a good dog, but he's losing interest pretty quick. Alpha would not give up. He just kept searching and searching and searching and searching until we finally were satisfied. Like, okay, he'll search till he's dead. Give him another toy. So because we're not going to find that one.
Yeah.
So we give him another toy, and then we took him off of it, or took him out of the grass. So you're looking for like how much do they want to work?
Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then size-wise, probably a little bit smaller isn't a bad thing. Like probably fit through tighter spaces, like more agile.
Yeah, I think that's probably more considered for the military. For us, it was we really didn't take into consideration their physical attributes. It was mostly like how good is their drive, how good is their aggression, do they fire up when they see like the bite sleeve, do they want like to engage it?
Yeah.
And then the other like important thing is you don't know if they're going to be equipment fixated, but you can kind of start seeing that early on. So one of the things we did with Alpha was one of my friends, he went up there with the sleeve, and of course Alpha fired up because he's seen the sleeve before. He knows, oh, I'm going to get to bite that. And then they take the sleeve off and set it on the ground, and then the decoy moves around away from the sleeve and starts agitating the dog to see if he wants the man or does he want the sleeve. If he wants the sleeve, it may not be the end of the world, but that's something to think about. And Alpha didn't care. He wanted to go after the person. So his prey drive was outweighing the equipment fixation. So that was important.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
How old is Alpha?
He's 4 now.
And how old are they usually when they come into police work, and how old are they when you're like, it's time for them to retire?
It varies. So I think Alpha was he wasn't even 2 yet when I got him. So he was 1. He turned 2 in training. I think Chaos was already 2 when I got him. Sometimes they're 3 or 4 when we get them. It really just depends on you know, their journey to get to us, you know, because most of them are coming from other countries, and then these vendors go out there and they've got their breeders that they buy from and they bring them back. So I would say anywhere between 1 and 3 it would be average for a dog to begin the training. And then really it's just their health. That kind of dictates when they retire. That's what happened with Duke. He started having hip problems, and he didn't want to retire, but I felt like this is just too much for him. Like it's selfish for me to keep pushing. Like he's just going to tear his body up, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's probably like around 9.
Yeah, between 8 and 9 is on average.
That's what I would guess. Wish they could live forever.
I do too, and that's what was really tragic about Chaos. He got cancer when he was 6, so he never even got to retire.
Wow,
so
that's so young.
He passed away while he was. I mean, he wasn't at work when he passed away, but he was still active duty when he.
Did he have lymphoma or bone cancer?
No, it was his whole body was ate up with cancer, but it was frustrating because they didn't know he had cancer until they did the autopsy. So they didn't know what was wrong with him. They found other things. One of them was a fungal infection. One of them was Bartonella.
Okay,
If I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. It's been so long now. But I remember it was...
Poor thing.
It seemed like the cancer lowered his immune system.
Yes.
And then he started getting all these other things. So that's what the vets would find. And they thought that's what it was. But there was obviously the underlying issue. And I was told after they did the autopsy that he was just covered in cancer. So.
Wow. At least, I mean, that's terrible, but at least it gives you a little peace of mind that there was nothing more that you could have done.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was hard. It was definitely hard.
And so we'll take Alpha, for example. How would you explain like dogs that are on duty and off duty? Like, does he know, like, okay, I'm home now, I can chill? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. I I'd like to describe the dogs as they almost have like these little computer programs in their brain.
Yeah.
You know they don't look at things like humans do. You know, we kind of look at things analytically. For them, it's much more like a math equation. 1 + 1 = 2, right? So, and so for me, I just don't do anything work related at home. I make sure home is always relaxing. That I don't do any training. I'm not saying all officers do that. Some officers probably train at home with their dogs, and obviously that can be done. But for me, Alpha knows that when we get home, he you know they know when you pull on the street. I don't know what it is, if they have the bumps memorized or whatever, but
They're
he'll like
so
stand
smart.
up, stand up in his crate and like, oh, we're home, and he knows he's gonna get fed. He knows what he eats when he gets home, so he gets really excited. So I make sure to just never do anything work related at home, and then when they're like at work, how do they know when to go to and from?
They just know.
It's more than that. They're picking up on things. There's pictures that they recognize, and this goes back to the 1 + 1. So a great example that illustrates it is one day I was in the parking lot with Alpha, and I was talking to another team member he had just drove up. So he's in his driver's seat talking to us through the window. Alpha's fine. Alpha doesn't think anything. He's just like sitting there like, all right, where are we going? And then at one point, I think there was music playing. So the guy that was talking to me just started like tapping to the music, but he was tapping the window frame. And one of the things that we do when we're teaching the dogs, like the early stages of how to go into a vehicle to get a bad guy, is the decoy will slap the window frame. So luckily I'm at this point, this is my 4th dog. I've seen things go bad enough times where I figured it out before Alpha did. So as soon as he started tapping the window, my brain recognized it, like that's not good. And Alpha went from total calm to lunging towards that vehicle, and I was able, like I anticipated it, so I was able to get him back. And
but
and of course my buddy was like, "Oh, what just happened?" I was like, "Well, because he thought you were." He doesn't know. Like, to him, this is all a game. He thought you were playing the window game.
Right.
So,
he's like, let's play.
yeah.
Have you ever had an instance at home where you're like, oh no, Alpha is
I'm really careful about
mode.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So because of that, like I've always been very aware of that. I don't want a picture to trigger his brain. Like, oh, that looks like that game that we play. So, with my kids, it was from very early ages, like, hey, we don't run around him. There's certain things we don't do if he's out. If you're around him, you just can't do that around him, because he may misinterpret it. And even if he doesn't, he's bigger than you. If he thinks you're playing with him, he might get knocked down. So
all kids should learn that no matter what with their pets, I think.
For sure.
There's a way to interact with them.
Yeah.
And is he like lovey-dovey when he's off duty, like belly rubs and
so that's what makes him so special. He is so social, but then also very fierce when it's time to do work. And I've never had a dog that was quite to both extremes like he is. Duke was really good, but Alpha is just a little more like loves affection, loves being pet on. Chaos was very much, he had the mentality of it's us versus the world. And I didn't give him that. Like, that's just, they all have their own personalities.
That way,
Yeah. He was very untrusting. He wouldn't let other people pet him. He did the integration stuff, but if we were like done with an op or if like we were taking a break from training, he didn't want anyone to pet him except me.
Interesting.
If anyone else tried to touch him, he'd start growling. But Alpha's the exact opposite. He's like, yes, I want treats. I want love. Please pet me. I love it. And then when it's work time, he snaps into work mode, and he's the best. He's the best dog I've ever worked.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've seen some of your videos on Instagram, and obviously going into SWAT situations, you have tons of gear.
Yes.
What kind of gear do the dogs wear?
So that's a great question, because that has evolved so much just in my time in K-9. When I came on K-9, there were no ballistic vests for the dogs. I mean, they existed, but they were worthless. They stopped the bullets, but they were so cumbersome. It was more of a hindrance for the dog than it was, especially if you work in a hot environment. So it really wasn't until I was in K-9, I believe it was 2013, there was a few dogs that were killed in the line of duty in Canada. And there was 2 companies, LOF Defense and Storm, K-9 Storm, and they started innovating and coming up with these vests that are just phenomenal now. So there's an organization called Spikes K-9, and they travel around the country, and they get donations, and then they outfit a lot of the departments with these ballistic vests, and that's how we got ours. So Alpha has a ballistic vest that was manufactured by K-9 Storm, donated by Spikes, and it's a level 2 ballistic vest. So he's got that protection on him at all times. And then one thing that I do that I have him wear that I don't want to say is controversial, but a lot of handlers don't like the idea, is I put a med kit actually on. It's attached to his vest, and what we use Alpha for may be different than what some other departments use their dogs for. So I can get the argument of, hey, I don't want anything on my dog because it's going to get hung up on things. I want my dog to be slick. I understand that argument. I don't really have any way to dispel that, but all I can say is, on my operations, it has not been a hindrance yet. And with human medical, we subscribe to the thought of, hey, if an officer goes down and we need to do medical on him, we're going to use his medical gear. We're not going to use ours. We don't want to deplete ours because I may need mine in 10 minutes from now. So if the gear is available, use their gear first, and that way you always have some still. So fortunately, with the dogs, a lot of the medical interventions are the same. Like, we can still use chest seals. We use the same gauze to pack wounds. Really, the only thing that they have that is different is, like, I want them to have needles on them, so for needle decompression or bloat. But that's the only thing that they have that's specific to them. But I'd like to keep a kit on him for the same reason. I want him to always have medical gear with him, so that way, one, my guys don't have to use theirs on him. They can just use his. But two, what if I already used mine and now I don't have any more? Well, at least the dog's got his.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can get the argument for them, like, getting hung up if they're, like, jumping fences and whatnot. But I guess the likelihood of that happening is so much less, and you'd rather be safe than sorry.
There's pros and cons with everything. You're giving up something to get a benefit of something. And it's an individual decision, but that's the decision that our team has gone with. And we, not to be like, oh, we're right, but we've trained with some military units that
they do that.
Yeah, they taught us the medical stuff, and we did some training with them last month, and that specific question came up. One of my medics asked him, hey, what do you think about this? And he was like, oh, absolutely. We tell all our handlers to have the dog have their own kit. So it was kind of like
affirming.
Yeah, like, okay, we're not complete idiots.
Yeah, no, not at all. What is one of the most, you mentioned a couple of the situations you've been in, but what is one of the most challenging situations you've faced on duty with your K-9?
It's usually those standoffs. I've been involved in several, or been there for several of those suicidal people that, and that we're trying to end it as peacefully as possible. Have
you ever had one of your dogs get hurt?
Oh, I've been so lucky. Duty? No. And honestly, that goes a lot to deploying them responsibly. I know there's no guarantee. There's no way we can guarantee that this dog isn't going to get shot, but there's I see some departments and the way they use their dog, it just doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it's like it needs to be a symbiotic relationship. Right? The dog is faster than us. The dog is keeping us safe. It's screwing with the bad guys, OODA loop his brain. If we come into a room with a dog, his brain has to process all that. Like, oh, there's a dog. Oh, there's a person with a gun. Like, then they have to make a decision, and by then the dog's already closed half or more of the distance. But if I just deploy that dog recklessly, I'm going to get him hurt because he can't protect himself from lethal force. Right. He needs us for that. So, so I don't know. It may be luck. It may be God. It may be we've just been smart, but we try our best to make sure to mitigate any dangers to that dog before we use him.
I'd have to guess if you've been doing it for this long, it's probably not all luck.
Yeah, hopefully
You're
not,
probably doing it responsibly. What would you say some of the biggest misconceptions are, or most surprising things people probably don't realize when we talk about working with tactical canines?
I think the biggest misconception is kind of, I hinted at it earlier with the use of force. I think most people think like, oh man, you guys you're just biting everybody, or that's barbaric, or it's just, is that necessary? But in my experience, at least, it's been the exact opposite. It's more of a deterrent than anything. And yes, there are people that we actually have to use the dog with, but it's way better than the alternative, you know. So
I'd have to assume too, there's probably some people out there that are like, oh, the dogs, like, do the dogs really like doing that? Like, what's their quality of life
that is
like?
a misconception. Yeah, there's some people, that think that that we're abusing the dogs or that we're forcing these dogs to do stuff. And that goes back to that breed. These
Yes.
dogs, they want to work.
They're
They need
born for
some
this.
kind of stimulation like that. So I can say, going from no experience with dogs and going straight into the K-9 unit, and just my eyes were open. I was like, oh my God, this dog, he doesn't want to go home. He wants to go to work.
Yeah.
He does. This is the best part of his day. He hates it when he goes home. He just
Yeah.
wants to be here doing this stuff. So, the dogs love it. They absolutely love it. And, they can't conceptualize it. They don't know that, hey, this is us going after bad people. They just, to them, it's just all a game.
Right.
They're just having fun.
It's work. And they're
Yes.
out with their
Yes.
uncles, uncles and their dad, like you said.
Yeah.
Do you have any women on the SWAT team, or is it all men?
On the SWAT team currently, it's all men.
Okay.
There are 2 female handlers at our department in the
Okay.
K-9 unit. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
One thing that you had talked about, well, you were just talking about it,
Mhm.
was deploying your dogs responsibly, and that just sending them in almost, I don't want to say like a suicide mission, but sending them in
It is.
without the humans that
Mhm.
have the lethal force. I feel like that's something that you have focused on with your company,
Yes.
Righteous Tactics. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So
Drink break.
I started the company last year in 2024. I knew I wanted to do something when I left the department. Whenever I retire, I was like, I know I want to train dogs, but for the longest time, I didn't really know what that would be. There's so many dog trainers out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then as this program grew, I realized, okay, not many people are teaching this, so maybe that could be my niche. Maybe that's what I can focus on. That way, I don't have to compete with, thousands of other people. There's tons of people that teach obedience, and most of them, you don't even have to be police to teach that.
Right.
So I went to a SWAT team leader class last year, and there were a bunch of canines that were killed in the line of duty last year leading up to this, but I remember reading the stories and listening to some of the debriefs and hearing how these people are using their dogs. It's hard to say this because people get mad. And I've pissed people off saying these things before, but I don't know any other way to say it. Like, that dog didn't need to die.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the way you guys used that dog got that dog killed. Now, that dog may have died no matter what, but if you send a dog into a room by himself, what do you think is going to happen if that guy's got a gun? Now, the argument that people will make is, well, that dog saved our lives because he told us that there was someone in that room with a gun. And that is true. They did determine that, but I guess I encourage people to think of, like, let's think outside the box here for a second. If time is on our side, like, this isn't a hostage rescue situation, and if it was, we probably wouldn't be using a dog anyway because the dog would probably bite the hostage. But if time is on our side and we know, hey, there's a likelihood that someone is in this building and they're violent, do we have other tools? Are there other options to try to determine if someone else is in there other than using the dog as a canary? Our team, we use drones. There's some teams that have robots. There's other ways that we can possibly, like, probe this area rather than sacrificing a dog. So I'm at this class and I'm just hearing, I'm hearing how some of these teams are using their dogs, and I'm getting angry, and I'm thinking about some of these dogs that have died already this year. And I get home and I just decided I just need to start. I don't need to wait till I retire. I need to start this company now, and maybe it'll catch on, maybe it won't, but I can't just keep sitting here watching people use their dogs like this, especially if it's just because they haven't thought of it another way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what a lot of it is. I don't think anyone thinks to themselves, I want to get my dog killed.
You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. And some people just hadn't thought of it that way. And honestly, to be fair, originally I hadn't thought of it that way either. But a good example would be, I believe it was Nebraska. There was a SWAT call out where the man was inside. They weren't sure where he was, but he ended up being in the basement. So they sent the dog in to the house by himself with no officers. And of course, the dog got shot and killed. And then they confirmed, okay, he's in the basement. And then the police department used I think they used the fire department to flood the basement to get this guy to come out and surrender. But that dog died, and I don't know. It seems like there could have been another way to do that.
Yeah, robots, like you said, or
Yeah.
drones, like those kinds of interesting. And so you're using training tactics that say, hey, let's go as a unit rather than, or the other alternatives of figuring out what's going on rather than just sending your dog in.
Yeah. So I guess the company has like 3 facets, I would say, that we focus on. So one, people that want to integrate their dogs into a tactical team and they don't know how. Like, hey, how do you guys get the dog to understand who is part of the team and who isn't? Like, we need help with that. So we can help teach dogs how to seamlessly integrate with that team. The other facet is I use a lot of PowerPoint and body cam footage from the mistakes that we've made over the years to help like kind of illustrate, hey, this was a mistake. We didn't think of it beforehand. This is the lesson we learned. Now you can learn that lesson not without having to do it the hard way like we did, and then educate them on ways to use these dogs. Like, how can we deploy the dog in a way that's going to keep them as safe as possible and keep us, because that keeps us safe as possible.
Right.
You know, in one of my videos, I talk about it too. If I know that there's a guy in this room and he's got a gun, like let's say he shot his wife and he's hell-bent on not going to jail today.
Right.
If I send that dog in there and the dog dies, we still got to go get that guy at some point. Nothing has changed except we've lost a dog. So what makes more sense, going in that room by ourselves or going in that room simultaneously with the dog?
Right.
Or maybe there's another way to do it. I don't know, but
that makes sense.
But sending the dog by himself is definitely not the answer.
No.
At least not to me.
No, not at all.
So we teach that, and then we also teach medical, like so how to actually do interventions and save that dog's life if they do get hurt.
I think that's amazing and like a really important part of what you do.
Yeah.
Which is in the line of duty, being able to place a tourniquet or do decompression, and that can save the pet's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you work with a human medic to teach guys that?
Yeah, so we've got several guys on our team that have gone through medic school. They've gone to our city's fire department academy, and they're full medics. So that's how the medical program started. Originally, it was just humans, but at least for our team. And then once I started my own company, one of the medics came up to me and he said, "Hey, have you thought about teaching medical for the dogs?" And I said, "Well, I hadn't, but that does sound like a good idea." And then he just started brainstorming with me, like telling me ideas, things that he was thinking about. And at that point, he had gone to a couple different K-9 combat medical schools. So he had a wealth of knowledge, and he was like on our operations, he was the lead medic for the dogs if any of the dogs went down. And at that point, none of my dogs had gotten hurt, but he had to administer real life IVs several times on different call outs just because the weather was so hot.
Yeah.
So he's great. He's so knowledgeable and he's so forward thinking. So he starts telling me all these ideas like, hey, there's classes out there right now, but no one, like, there's plenty of knowledge out there, like people with more knowledge than I have. This is him talking, but no one has a really great way to practice it right now. Like, they just have stuffed animals. Some schools may have access to cadaver dogs or something like that, but no one is like really giving people repeatable repetitions to like get muscle memory on this stuff.
Yeah.
And he started coming at me with all these different ideas on how to like create that type of environment. And then he brought it to the next level. He said, okay, so we start in the classroom, we teach them the skills, they understand it like cognitively, but then they start going hands-on, and then once they start getting that practice, then we start adding stress to it. So because there's a big difference between doing it like
in a classroom,
or on a stuffed animal in a classroom. Now you're working on a dog that is moving around, stressed. and you are stressed as well. So it's been great. That's
kind of like going to vet school, honestly. We learn how to do surgery on cadavers, or like we intubate stuffed animals, and then we get out into the real world and it's like, holy smokes.
This is much different.
Way different. Like Fluffy's mom is scary, and this dog's not doing well under anesthesia. So it's not the exact same, but I can understand that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's lucky that you've never really had to, you have not personally had any dogs hurt in the line of duty.
Yeah, not yet, thankfully.
Yeah. How would you describe in 3 words the bond between a handler and his or her K-9? You can use more than 3 if you
Yeah, I
want,
might
but I
have
like
to.
right
Yeah,
3.
I think it might change based on the experiences of each
Okay.
handler and each dog. For me, for instance, Duke wasn't even my dog to begin with. He was my friend's dog. So when I got him, I mean, I didn't mistreat him by any means, but I didn't really feel bonded with him
Mm-hmm.
at first. But
Mm-hmm.
then within, within I think 2 or 3 weeks, we had been shot at, and then just a bunch of critical incidents together. One of them, we were completely. This may have to go into a full story to understand it, but we ended up
Go for
covered
it.
in human feces.
Oh my gosh.
Like me and the dog, completely covered head to toe, and we're having to get like
How
washed down by the fire
did that
department.
happen?
It ended up being a mentally ill person who had just threatened to go into a business and kill everybody in that business. So police obviously got called out, and then when the patrol got there, he had a gun, so they got him contained. So they brought us out there to try to defuse the situation. And he was homeless, and he was in a homeless, I guess his homeless camp area, but
Mm-hmm.
he had positioned himself purposely into like he had just been using this one area to go to the bathroom for I don't know how many weeks, but
Mm-hmm.
it was just
Covered.
it was just basically a latrine, and he had positioned himself in that. Now none of us knew it at the time. Like from a distance, it just looked like mud. But when we ended up having to go get him,
It was poop.
that's when we found out that it was feces. So
Wow.
and he had shot at us too. So going through those experiences with Duke, like that bond was strong.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a hard time. I ended up giving that dog back to the handler when he retired, and it was hard
Mm-hmm.
because I really loved him.
I guess I'd have to imagine that, we all love our pets,
Mhm.
but I go to work every day and they sit at home on the couch like little vegetables,
Yeah.
living the dream life. I mean, you go to work every single day. I can't imagine that bond must be like, each other like the back of your hand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we see each other more than I see my wife and kids. So
I'm sure
yeah, it's a strong bond.
it's really special. Any other crazy stories from your time on duty?
There's quite a few. Let's see. I'll go back to it with Chaos because he was my first, and we had some good times. So there was one night where we were searching a restaurant that had been burglarized, and patrol, when they got there, they saw people inside, so they immediately called for K-9, and they set up a perimeter. So Chaos and I got there, and we start searching systematically through the restaurant, and I didn't know it at the time, but this burglar had brought, this is like 3 a.m. They brought their child with them on the whatever you want to call it, the crime.
That's insane.
And they left them in their car in the parking lot. Now at this time, I don't know if I didn't know, but I don't know if patrol had even realized that there was a kid in the car yet. Like I don't know if anyone had gotten to that vehicle yet. They were all still fixated on the building. So so I searched the building and it's clear, and I'm like, okay, did we miss him? And patrol is adamant. They're like, no, we saw him in there, and we surrounded this place. We didn't miss him. Like he didn't get out, so he's in there. I'm like, okay, well how terrible would that be? I say, hey, the restaurant's clear, and then the owner comes in the morning, and the guy's still in there. Like
Yeah.
that wouldn't be good. So I'm like, all right, let me think here. What did I miss? Where else could we search? And then I realize I haven't searched the shed yet. There's a shed in the back of the restaurant. So I go over to the shed, and I don't know if it's because I was tired. Surely I don't think I was being complacent, but I really didn't think he was going to be in there. And I opened the shed, and he is in there, and he's got a big butcher knife that he took from the restaurant, and he's got it like, as I slide the door open to the shed, he's like up like this. And I had Chaos, and Chaos he didn't need me to tell him what to do. So, I mean, Chaos knew he was already in there. When I look back on it, I was like, okay, he was giving me indication that there was human odor there. So Chaos was anticipating someone there. So as soon as that shed opened, Chaos was going in. So Chaos bit the guy before he could do anything with that knife. And I just remember the guy, like, from the pain, just like dropping the knife.
Wow.
Once again, probably saved his life, because as I was
Yeah.
processing knife, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm not going to let this guy stab me. I'm going to pull my gun out and probably
Right.
have to shoot this guy. Because we were like face to face. I mean, he was tucked in the shed, but the shed was full of stuff. So he like got in there and then slid the door shut when he ran from patrol.
Wow.
So I opened the door, and he's like right there.
With a knife waiting for you.
With a knife waiting for me. So of course, he gets dog bit, and we get him in custody. And what I did not realize at the time was that his child was in the car, and I don't know if they could see everything, but they knew something. They knew their dad got arrested at least, and it was just, I remember my heart like breaking. Like what? Like one, who does that? Like
Terrible.
you're a criminal to begin with. Why are you doing this to begin with? But why would that's a whole nother level. You're bringing your child with you, so. This kid was scared, rightfully so. And I remember going to my police car, and I had a lunch packed, and I didn't really know what else to do, So I grabbed my lunch and I took it to the kid, and I was like, "Are you hungry? Do you want anything to eat?" And I gave him my sandwich and my food, and then I don't remember if they were able to get someone else to come get the child, or if it just went. If like DCS came out there,
Wow.
Child Services to get the child, but
How heartbreaking.
yeah, it was just a really like. A lot in a short amount of time. Like I just went from, hey, this is clear, there's nothing in here, to I almost got stabbed, and we caught the guy. Oh, and here's this child.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm sure that's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Chaos was sniffing at the shed, like he knew there was human odor. I have to imagine they can like track down.
Yeah. So Chaos was a dual purpose dog. And what I mean by that is he wasn't just for apprehension. He was also a drug dog. So I've worked 2 dogs that were dual purpose like that. My first and second dog were both drug dogs.
Okay.
As well as apprehension. So yeah, Chaos could track. Now we were doing a building search, so we weren't actually doing a track, but looking back on it, I remember like my peripheral vision like picked up on it, and it just didn't register. I don't know if I was just tired or I just really thought the guy wasn't there and I was being complacent, but looking back on it, he gave little indications like there's something here. Whether it was a shed or not, he was in the odor of a human. And I should have picked up on that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have another maybe random question. You might not know the answer to this. The dogs at the airport that are sniffing, what are they sniffing for?
I believe they should be sniffing for bombs.
Okay.
Those are usually bomb dogs.
Okay, that's what I thought. And the dogs on the police force aren't necessarily bomb sniffing dogs. They're more like apprehension.
It's going to depend on the agency, but so our agency has a bomb squad.
Okay.
And they have dogs that are just bomb dogs.
Okay.
And then we have like drug units that have dogs that are just drug dogs.
Wow.
But then the K-9 unit has the dual purpose dogs. So,
Got it.
I think it started probably in the 90s. It was like, well, what other ways can we maximize the efficiency of justifying paying all this money for these dogs? Like we don't just need them for apprehension. So, and honestly, most of the dogs really enjoy it anyway. Like they really love, like I said, they like to work, and there's not always bad guys to go after. So
yeah,
if you can dual purpose them, it gives them another outlet, another thing to do. So the K-9 unit itself, most of those dogs are either cross-trained with criminal apprehension and narcotic detection, or criminal apprehension and bomb detection.
got it. Okay, that makes total sense. Man, these dogs are impressive, aren't they?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I feel like this has been really informative, and my goal from this episode was just to let the audience hear a little bit more about what it looks like. And I think, I barely have an idea of what all that you guys do, and I think it's really amazing work. And so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If people want to get in touch with you, what are your handles? What's your website?
Yeah, at Righteous Tactics is my Instagram handle. I've got, at this point, I think I'm on all the socials, but that seems to be the one that gets the most traction. So I post mostly there. The website is www.righteoustactics.com.
Okay.
So
pretty easy to find you then.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then as always, if you guys have any questions for me, comments, let me know what you thought of today's episode. You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Josie Vet. And as always, please like, rate, review, subscribe, give us 5 stars. And we will see you next week.